National Electrical Code Section 406.9 addresses receptacles in damp or wet locations. It's important to understand the requirements to ensure electrical safety and code compliance. The core principle is that receptacles in wet locations must be protected from moisture. The level of protection required depends on whether the receptacle is attended or unattended. An unattended receptacle is one that is likely to be exposed to weather or water spray without someone actively monitoring its use. In these cases, a bubble cover is required. A bubble cover, also known as an in-use cover, provides weatherproof protection even when an appliance is plugged into the receptacle. This is because the cover is designed to enclose both the receptacle and the plug, preventing water from entering the electrical connections. Section 406.9b of the National Electrical Code mandates the use of an enclosure that is weatherproof whether or not the attachment plug is inserted. For unattended outlets in wet locations, such as those found outdoors or in washdown areas, the bubble cover is essential. Conversely, an attended receptacle is one where someone is present and can take precautions to prevent water from entering the receptacle. For example, an outdoor receptacle used for a power tool while someone is actively working nearby could be considered attended. In these cases, a regular flat weatherproof cover is permitted. This is because the person using the receptacle can unplug the appliance and close the cover when it is not in use, preventing water from entering the receptacle. Section 406.9 of the National Electrical Code states that a receptacle in a wet location and subject to routine washing requires an enclosure that is weatherproof when the attachment plug is removed. This means that a flat cover is acceptable as long as it provides adequate protection when the receptacle is not in use. To summarize, if an outlet is located in a wet location and is left unattended, such as outlets at locations #1b, #2b, #3b, and #4b, then a bubble-type weatherproof cover is required to provide protection against moisture and contaminants per NEC Section 406.9b. If the outlet is located in a wet location but is attended, such as outlets at locations #1a, #2a, #3a, and #4a, then a regular flat-type weatherproof cover is allowed, with reference to the requirements of NEC Section 406.9a. Here's a more detailed breakdown. Firstly, consider a 20 amp, 125 volts outlet located outdoors on the outside of a building. If this outlet is left unattended, meaning that there is no one present to monitor its use and protect it from the elements, a bubble-type cover is required. This is because the bubble cover provides continuous weatherproof protection, even when an appliance is plugged in. However, if the same 20 amp, 125 volts outlet is located outdoors but is attended, meaning that someone is present and can unplug the appliance and close the cover when it is not in use, a regular flat-type weatherproof cover is allowed. Secondly, consider a 20 amp, 125 volts outlet located in a washdown area inside of a building. Washdown areas are considered wet locations because they are subject to water spray and splashing. If this outlet is left unattended, a bubble-type cover is required. If the outlet is attended, a regular flat-type weatherproof cover is allowed. Thirdly, consider a 30 amp, 250 volts outlet located outdoors on the outside of a building. Similar to the 125 volts outlet, if this 250 volts outlet is left unattended, a bubble-type cover is required. If the outlet is attended, a regular flat-type weatherproof cover is allowed. Fourthly, consider a 30 amp, 250 volts outlet located in a washdown area inside of a building. Again, because washdown areas are considered wet locations, a bubble-type cover is required if the outlet is left unattended. If the outlet is attended, a regular flat-type weatherproof cover is allowed. It is important to note that all of these locations are considered wet locations by code. This means that they are subject to moisture and require weatherproof protection. The specific type of protection required depends on whether the outlet is attended or unattended. Choosing the correct type of weatherproof cover is crucial for electrical safety and code compliance. Using a bubble cover when required ensures that the outlet is protected from moisture, even when an appliance is plugged in. Using a regular flat cover when allowed provides adequate protection when the outlet is not in use. Always consult the National Electrical Code and local codes for specific requirements. Incorrect installation can lead to electrical hazards and code violations. The NEC defines a wet location as an area subject to saturation with water or other liquids and unprotected locations exposed to weather. This includes areas such as open car washes, unprotected roofs and platforms, and locations subject to saturation with water or other liquids such as vehicle washing areas. A damp location is defined as a location that is normally or periodically subject to moisture. Damp locations include partially protected locations under canopies, marquees, roofed open porches, and like locations, and interior locations subject to moderate degrees of moisture, such as some basements, some barns, and cold storage warehouses. Locations that are neither wet nor damp are considered dry locations. Dry locations are not normally subject to dampness or wetness. A receptacle installed in a wet location must be in an enclosure that is weatherproof whether or not the attachment plug is inserted. This requirement ensures that the receptacle is protected from moisture at all times, regardless of whether an appliance is plugged in. This is typically achieved with a bubble cover. In a damp location, a receptacle must have an enclosure that is weatherproof when the attachment plug is removed. This means that the receptacle must be protected from moisture when it is not in use. This can be achieved with a regular flat-type weatherproof cover. The type of receptacle also matters. Ground fault circuit interrupter (GFCI's) protection is often required for receptacles in wet and damp locations. A GFCI is a device that detects ground faults which can occur when electricity flows through an unintended path, such as through a person. GFCIs quickly interrupt the flow of electricity, preventing electrical shock. The National Electrical Code requires GFCI protection for receptacles in many locations, including bathrooms, kitchens, garages, and outdoor locations. GFCI protection can be provided by a GFCI circuit breaker or a GFCI receptacle. A GFCI circuit breaker protects the entire circuit, while a GFCI receptacle only protects the receptacle itself. When selecting a weatherproof cover, it is important to choose one that is listed for the intended use. Listed means that the cover has been tested and certified by a third party to meet certain safety standards. The listing mark will be visible on the cover. When installing a weatherproof cover, it is important to follow the manufacturer's instructions. This will ensure that the cover is properly installed and provides adequate protection from moisture. The cover should be securely attached to the receptacle box and should fit snugly against the wall or surface. The cover should also be made of a durable material that can withstand exposure to the elements. Regular inspections of weatherproof covers are important to ensure that they are in good condition and providing adequate protection from moisture. Covers that are cracked, broken, or damaged should be replaced immediately. It's also worth noting that the NEC is updated every 3 years, so it's crucial to stay informed about the latest code requirements. Local jurisdictions may also have their own amendments to the NEC, so it's always best to check with the local electrical inspector. In addition to the type of cover, the installation of the receptacle box itself is crucial for a weatherproof protection. The box should be securely mounted and sealed to prevent water from entering. Caulking or other sealant may be necessary to ensure a watertight seal. Proper wiring practices are also essential. All wiring connections should be tight and secure, and the wires should be protected from damage. Using the correct type of wire and connectors for the location is also important. For example, in wet locations, use wiring that is rated for wet locations. The location of the receptacle should also be considered. Avoid installing receptacles in areas that are directly exposed to water spray or runoff. If possible, install the receptacle under an overhang or other protective structure. Proper drainage is also important. Ensure that water can drain away from the receptacle area to prevent water from pooling. Educate users about the importance of weatherproof protection. Remind them to unplug appliances when they are not in use and to close the cover to prevent water from entering the receptacle. Consider using signage to remind users of these precautions. In summary, selecting the correct type of weatherproof cover, installing it properly, and following proper wiring practices are all essential for electrical safety and code compliance in wet and damp locations. Always consult the National Electrical Code and local codes for specific requirements, and consult with a qualified electrician if you have any questions. Remember, the difference between a bubble cover and a flat cover boils down to whether the receptacle is attended or unattended. If it's unattended in a wet location, go with a bubble cover for maximum protection. If it's attended, a flat cover might suffice, but always double check the code and consider the specific conditions of the location. Also consider that even if an outlet is attended, it may be left unattended at times, so using the bubble type cover may be a more practical and safer option to consider in many cases. Remember to always turn off the power at the breaker before working on any electrical wiring. Use proper safety equipment such as insulated gloves and safety glasses. If you are not comfortable working with electricity, consult with a qualified electrician. Electrical work can be dangerous, so it is important to take all necessary precautions. Staying informed about electrical safety and code requirements is an ongoing process. The NEC is updated regularly, and new products and technologies are constantly being developed. By staying informed, you can ensure that you are providing the safest and most compliant electrical installations.